But by and large, I think Ukraine is in a better position in 2026 than it was in 2025. It has certainly made progress on a couple of key issues, including manpower. The Ukrainian armed forces are no longer shrinking in comparison to 2025. There has also been progress when it comes to addressing the convoluted chain of command within the Ukrainian armed forces. The Ukrainian high command is no longer standing up additional units filled with inexperienced personnel that makes the combat value of these units very much, or throws it very much into question. So the Ukrainian armed forces are better at force management, and they now have an advantage, I would say, now, or at least parity on select parts of the front line in unmanned warfare, both on the ground and in the air. On the ground, I think it's primarily the result of Elon Musk's decision to cut off Starlink from the Russians. The Russians used a lot of Starlink terminals for conducting essentially unmanned ground operations, resupply missions, and so forth, and they can no longer.
By the way, can we just put a pause on this, because this is incredible to me. We brought up this issue of Starlink terminals being used by the Russians going back like 3 years when you and I were both in Kyiv. I think we were talking about this on the train ride back, and we were talking that all you need is sort of an allow list type of approach where you say, here are the Ukrainian terminals, turn off everything else in this area of responsibility that's not matching those serial numbers. The fact that it took them 3 years to go to Musk and ask for this is just mind-boggling to me. And look at the effect it has had, to your point.
I mean, it certainly had an effect. For sure, I don't think we should exaggerate the impact, but certainly what has happened is that it helped Ukraine gain the upper hand in unmanned warfare, at least for the next period of counter-adaptation, counter-adaptation, right? That perpetual cycle. In warfare, it certainly contributed to it. The larger issue, though, for the Russians is that Ukraine also has gained the advantage when it comes to mid-range strike capabilities. This was something that my colleague Michael Kaufman, Conrad, Rob Lee, they've been pointing that out for almost all of 2025, that's an issue, a capability gap that needs to be addressed. And also when we were conducting interviews with brigade commanders, soldiers behind or very close to the front line, that's one issue they always told us about. We see the enemy, we see the Russian scattering. We record the videos, but we can't hit them with anything because it's beyond our capability to strike these targets. And now the Ukrainians can actually strike assembly areas, high-value targets like radar systems, Russian supply lines. And it actually threw Russia into a dilemma, similar to what happened to the Ukrainians in 2024 and early 2025, trade-offs essentially between, do I defend this particular part of the front line with short-range air defenses, or do I move them back into Russia because of Ukraine's long-range strike campaign into Russia proper, because Russia particularly lacks now short-range interceptors.